wanted to start with some facts. Did you know that the increased demand in remote working and remote learning has accelerated the deployment of connected AV and UC devices by a factor of 40 in your own organizations? In the past 4 years, we have witnessed a surge of AV and UC devices getting connected to the enterprise network. And with that, there has been a reshape in the way your organizations have been designing and investing in these technologies. Forced to source equipment from various vendors due to the supply chain disruptions, most organizations today face a maze of multi-vendor AV technologies. And with that, there has been an increased complexity in building and designing and managing these solutions in the long run. And there's been an increased demand in bettering the skill sets and the tool sets required for robust operations and security. The IT managers of today are expected to manage AV in the same way you manage desktop, mobile, and UC. But the AV landscape lacks cohesion. It lacks interoperability. It's fragmented, and it's really not standardized. AV vendors come with a large amount of AV vendors come with a large number of platforms that are disjointed. They are proprietary technology systems, proprietary platforms, proprietary certifications. And so they don't really pay a lot of attention to the fact that a lot of these environments have become vendor agnostic. And this in turn increases the complexity of integration and interoperability. McKinsey predicts that by 2030, 74% of the business value of AV, UC, and IoT hinges on interoperability. They quote, "Current technology stacks are fragmented and siloed with many walled garden proprietary systems. Solving the interoperability challenges is critical to achieving maximum potential, except at the cloud layer." The problem is further compounded by the fact that the AV industry is highly focused on selling hardware. Meanwhile, most organizations have shifted their focus from products to services. They are a lot more invested in services, and this can be seen in the popular rise of UC-driven platforms. SaaS platforms like Microsoft Teams and Zoom Rooms have risen in popularity. And that's mainly due to the fact that they are easier to procure, easier to design, easier to install, and they are easier to manage in the long run. Yet they are intended for meeting spaces. And most often, the functional requirements go beyond that. And when that happens, then they fall short from that. So how do we fix this? Can we start consuming AV in the same way we consume UC today? Well, the answer is of course yes, and we've been doing it with many of you for the past 5 years. The answer is to start applying what we already have applied to IT, into AV, cloud, data, and AI, which are the main 3 things I'm going to be talking about today. So let's start with the cloud. 25 years ago, the standard practice in AV was to install controllers, hardware controllers in every room in order to handle system functionalities. At the same time, most IT organizations started to move their distributed compute into localized, centralized data centers. Fast forward 10 years later, and most organizations started adopting the cloud. They started moving all of this infrastructure that they had localized in their data centers into the cloud. Fast forward to today, and most of organizations out there embrace cloud technologies in a way or a model, whether it's private, public, or hybrid cloud. And also, there's a high preference for SaaS models. Yet, the AV industry, 25 years later, is still installing siloed hardware controllers in spaces. Why? Now, you might think this is resistance to change, but I have spent the last 8 years engaging with organizations around the globe to understand why have we not made that shift in the AV industry? Why has everything moved to the cloud and everything has moved forward, but we are still stuck like we were doing the same way 25 years ago. And I think it's mainly 3 reasons. The first reason, which you know very well, is the AV industry is highly incentivized and focused on selling new hardware. This is what they do on a day-to-day basis, and it's their business, and we can't blame them for it. That's how they grow their business. The second one is IT departments don't really like putting unmanaged, untrusted AV devices into their network. They would like to be more familiar with these devices. They would like to profile them, make them managed, get them more trusted before connecting them to the enterprise network. And the third one is the AV teams are highly reluctant in moving their AV service into the enterprise network, mainly because they think network unreliability is going to impact their AV service availability, and at the same time, they believe that the complexity introduced by the network is going to be really hard for them to maintain the AV service in the long run. So, how do we fix this? Well, the good news is we don't really need to, because it's already fixing itself. AV is rapidly evolving, and it's kind of transforming really fast, and it's not going to take 25 years. And it's not really doing it because it wants to. It's mainly doing it because IT strategies are driving AV forwards. IT initiatives like cloud first, preference for SaaS models, software-defined networks, zero trust networks, and many more are pushing AV forward. And so AV is no longer allowed to be a digital island that is siloed by itself next to IT. Most organizations today want to manage AV like they manage IT. And more importantly, most AV teams today are no longer working for facilities departments. They work and they have become part of the IT team. They started understanding the network a lot more, and then can collaborate with their IT professionals a lot better. IT professionals at the same time are starting to understand AV a lot more. IT professionals are a massive driving force around getting full stack, full visibility with remote management and monitoring solutions for AV in the same way they get it in IT. And so they would like the AV service to be monitored, managed, secured, controlled, automated, and supported. And so what does the users think in all of this? Well, the end user doesn't really care. What they really want is a unified user experience, regardless of what technology stacks we pick. And so interoperability is high on their requirements, and they don't really care what you actually choose in the background and what you do. And so how do we solve that problem? Well, organizations have 2 choices. They either go all in on a vendor and become vendor native end-to-end with one vendor, unifying the experience, but they are locked into one vendor. Or they go after a vendor agnostic strategy, which basically means you get all vendors and you abstract all vendors with a unified user experience, which is what your end users want, regardless of what vendor technologies you choose. In the last 2 years, we have seen an increased demand for remote management and monitoring tools globally that is AV specific. And so that's happening along the same time. Most environments of AV have become vendor agnostic, not really because we want to, but a lot of the time it happened because of the disruption of the supply chain. And so AV is transforming, and it's transforming really fast, and it's highly being driven by IT teams and the incorporation of AV teams into IT teams. And so what's left now is to make sure that your AV departments, if they haven't done it already, to start transforming and join this transformative journey. Otherwise, AV will always be stuck behind and will always remain as a digital island. Now let's talk about data, the second topic of today. Data is valuable everywhere in every business, across every business domain. It is certainly valuable in AV and UC, and it provides you wonderful things like insights into what are the most effective pedagogies, how and when are your spaces being utilized for better real estate efficiencies, which and what technologies are being used and which ones are not being used for better design decision making. And so data is valuable in every decision every interaction, and every process. Yet, we see a lot of people collecting data, but for data to be translated to business value, it is rare. A lot of people are collecting data out there, but they give you no business value. So how do we make sure that our AV is data-driven and our data is translated to business value? At Innomate, sorry, one second. At Innomate, we have a fundamental objective in the data collection and correlation of data across multiple vendors. We have kind of three main foundational objectives. The first one is to equip you to make better business decisions. The second one is to equip the user with a better experience. And the third one is to equip your support teams with better support tools. And we do that by applying IT observability principles to AV. So what is observability? Without getting too deep into this topic, I think Splunk is outside that can tell you all about it. But simply put, observability is the ability to measure a system's health and state based on the data it generates, the data output it generates. So we're looking at logs, events, metrics, and traces. This is very different to your IT traditional monitoring tools, which are notorious for spamming you and flooding you all day long and leaving gaps and blind spots behind. Observability has gained massive popularity in the last few years in cloud environments. And that is mainly due to the complexity of the cloud technologies and the diversity of these technologies, such as microservices and serverless. And so there are so many different technologies being used, and we need this one place for all the data to be centralized and correlated for us to understand what is going on. That is observability. Now, with its disjointed platforms and lack of interoperability and fragmentation, AV complexity poses the same challenges. And it turns out observability is the perfect recipe to solve that. And so we'll skip all of these. I think I covered them. So what's the outcome? So once you apply observability, your AV is data-driven. What is the outcome? A lot of people can tell you that in this room because we've worked with them and they've seen the outcome. But I've just got a few examples here. So you get better responsive support because you now have full end-to-end visibility across all vendors, across the entire stack. You have an all-seeing eye that is capable of to cross-vendor data correlation and to provide you the ability to monitor the unknown unknowns across all of your vendors, regardless of which ones you have in the ecosystem. You get a better user experience that is optimized based on user interactions. You get better operational efficiency because you can troubleshoot and get root cause analysis a lot faster. You get a reduced service downtime because you can detect anomalies a lot earlier and before they become fires. You get better security forensics because you now have full stack auditability and compliance reporting. You get faster intrusion detection because you can now stream your live security events from all of your AV vendors into your SIEMs. And you get better data-driven financial planning, which we have been doing across many universities in here. And that is leaning on live asset data in order to plan your next iteration of uplifts or upgrades. And so one of the most important things, though, about observability that I see is it switches your operational teams from firefighting mode to proactive mode. That is the most important thing that I see out there. And that's because they're not really waiting for someone to raise a ticket for them to solve a problem. They know that there's a problem that is out there before anyone tells them about it. OK, so data is equal business value. We've established that. Now, let's talk about AI. Well, AI has been making significant changes across industries. It's had a deep impact, especially on IT. We can see it in IT everywhere these days. Yet, in AV, it still remains conceptual. Why is that? Well, because there are no AI models that understand the nuances and the specifics of AV yet. I mean, we barely understand them. AV, a lot of the times, is kind of referred to as black magic. So I don't expect any AI model to understand AV to be just provided to us like that. I think we're going to have to train it. And so can we train an AI model starting from a foundational AI model from IT? Can we train it to understand AV? And the answer is yes, we can, absolutely. You see, data is the fuel of AI. Without data, there is no AI. It is the fuel. And the cloud is the engine of AI. And so with those two, you are well equipped to start enabling AI. And so for the past few years, if your AV department has been investing in the cloud and data, or your entire organization is doing so, then you are well equipped to move to the age of AI. But if you are still installing siloed hardware controllers in rooms, well, you're like this guy, you have no chance. You're stuck behind. So what can we foresee AI providing us in terms of business value? Strategic financial planning. So in the first case, when you had data, we were doing financial planning based on live asset data, which is what we are doing today. So we lean a lot on data, and we work with a lot of university departments to better plan our upgrades. But how can AI help us with that? Well, AI can take into consideration your strategy in terms of investments. Are you consolidating? Are you expanding? Are you uplifting? What are you doing? And it takes into consideration the technology usage out there. How is your technology being used? What is the live asset data? What's the cost of replacement of these assets? All of these things can be taken into consideration by using an AI model that understands what you have out there and what you're trying to achieve. You also get easier data-driven decisions because you can now talk in natural language to an AI model and basically ask it, hey, are we getting usage on these document cameras that we are installing in the rooms? And the answer could be not in English. It could be in insights, in visualizations. And this technology already exists. For those who know AWS, AWS QuickSight Q is already able to do that. So if you have the data, you have the cloud, you're going to be able to do that. Better user experiences. One of the ones I'm really interested in is the ability to detect unusual user interactions in rooms. Imagine a teacher that's kind of pressing buttons in a weird way in a room because they can't get the room going. Well, that can be detected now. And if you detect it, you can immediately try to reach out and proactively support them instead of them reaching out to you. That is a lot better for user experience. Faster resolution times. And this is something we're actually currently working on in our kind of platform. You can see something we call diagnosis. Our people are looking at the problems out there and diagnosing what's the problem, what's the root cause, and attaching it to an incident. That's allowing us to train an AI based on context across the entire platform. What is actually going on? What's the state of the system? And what did the human detect in terms of what the problem is? And so the future for us is we have an AI model that is able to see all of this context from data and tell you where the problem is and how to fix it immediately. And live documentation. We see this a lot. What do I have out there? What does my environment look like? What's my documentation like? And so the AI model is going to be able to generate for us space directories. What spaces do I have out there? What service catalog do I have? Can I browse my spaces? And more importantly, we've already tested this. It is able to actually regenerate or reverse generate your documentation and designs. So it's able to generate line drawings and schematics, which is a massive expenditure on most organizations, including universities, which I think is what you call audits. I see a lot of audits going out there where people go out and spend a lot of money visiting rooms to redocument these rooms because they aged over time. Okay, so at Innomate, for the past 8 years, we have been building cloud-based solutions for AV. And for the past 5, we have been collecting AV-specific data. We believe we are uniquely positioned to take AV into the AI age, and we are pioneering the next wave of AI innovations for AV. And finally, I wanted to close with what McKinsey says. Wise leaders often opt in to be smart laggards, filtering out the noise and concentrating on those technologies that are proven to work best for their organizations, instead of following every trend out there. 8 years ago, we had early adopters, and I'm very thankful. We were the new kid on the block. Today, we are 10 times larger, and we're actually the largest globally in what we do. specializing in AV-specific multi-vendor remote and management and monitoring tools, AV control and automation, and AV and UC interoperability by unifying the user experience across all of that and providing one interface for support and for the end users. And so I'm very excited to be today here with you, technologists and business leaders. And I'm very keen on working with you in transforming the AV industry if we are not already doing it together. And I wanted to close by giving you a quick animation on what Innomesh is, our platform, which is now battle-hardened and proven across multiple organizations globally. Over to you. Any questions today?
Have any questions? So I guess one from me, Paul. What next? Where do you see this going? I think back when I first met you 6 or 8 years ago. We were just starting this whole journey. Where do you think this is going next?
I think AI is definitely a big part of our next phase. As I said, we've been capturing a lot of AV data. We've been working very closely with your teams and learning about your needs in the businesses and using data to fulfill that. And there's a lot of examples in this room, because we learn a lot from your teams about your business's needs, and we turn that into solutions. I think the next phase is using AI to actually solve these solutions faster and cheaper. So when we first came to the market, we realized that there's a long legacy in AV, and we needed to support all of these investments that go back about 10 and 12 years. So we support, I think, up to 2012, which is about 12 years ago. You can actually see that on our stand today. Some of the touch panels we are unifying the experience with are actually running technology from 12 years ago in AMX and Crestron, and they are running side by side with the Cisco Room Kit that's currently running MTR Android, and it's just been released, and they have the same user experience.